Prince changed up a lot musically as soon as the 80s rang in, and that occurred with the release of his third album, Dirty Mind. It was recorded with the company of his band at the time, who were known as the Rebels. There was keyboardist Matt Fink, guitar player Des Dickerson, Bobby Z on drums, Andre Simone on bass, and Lisa Coleman on keyboards. She replaced Gail Chapman from the 1979 edition of that band. Now, Dirty Mind was a real game changer for Prince. Songs like the title song, Do It All Night, were much more in line with the brittle rock new wave sound at the time. Allegedly, Warner Brothers were said to have commented on this album, "We signed the new Stevie Wonder, and now we're getting the new Rick Ocasek." They just didn't quite understand where Prince was coming from. But he had some tremendous funk on that album. And that album actually was very significant for his persona, because I believe it was one of the first albums to get a separate parental advisory sticker before Tipper Gore came along. We'll get into that a little bit later. That explain that the album may have some offensive lyrics. There's a new wave guitar song on here called Sister, which is actually about incest. And it's probably Prince's most disturbing song lyrically. But to be honest with you, this album is absolutely brilliant. You know, it has Head, which is a tremendous funk jam. Morris Day even comes in to play drums on Party Up, which is a powerful anti-war jam. Actually, lyrically goes into what would happen on another album that I'll discuss in a minute. And there was a song on here called Uptown, which was a great kind of funky rocker too. This album was also home to When You Were Mine, which was a great Cars-like new wave rocker. I suppose it started the Rick Ocasek comparisons. And Cyndi Lauper even covered it, and I believe had a hit with that song. The album has a very demo-like raw quality, but it's still one of Prince's greatest works, and I just can't knock what this album did. It was just absolutely tremendous. Controversy actually tried to mingle Prince's political view with his sexual one, and he sums it up in an idea he calls the new breed. On a song on here called Sexuality, which is a potent new wave funk number, he says, you know, don't let your children watch television until they learn how to read. Otherwise, all they'll know how to do is cuss, fight, and breed. Another kind of new wavy number on there, Ronnie Talk to Russia. I'm not really too into that lyrically, but aren't we all? But Controversy really helps sets up his stripped-down funk sound. Same with Let's Work. Some amazing bass work on those songs. This kind of avant-garde new wave rocker, anti-Christian, sets up his paranoia. He's talking about black children in Atlanta being killed, the murder of John Lennon, and saying, anti-Christian, until you're crucified, I'll live my life in taxi cabs. So that's Controversy. If you open up the album, on some of these newspapers, you even see Joni. Joni Mitchell was one of Prince's major influences at this point. It also has a song called Do Me Baby on it, a really nice elongated ballad, which Andre Simone apparently was the composer of, and Prince took credit for it, but that's a whole other story. Now, those albums did pretty well critically for him, but in terms of his commercial success, nothing compared to this album, 1999. Remember I mentioned Uptown on Dirty Mind? 1999 extends on that. Prince's lyrics that were socially aware were often based on a baby boomer thing about the atomic bomb. And on this song, he's basically saying everybody's got the bomb, we could all die, but if it's going to happen, I'm just going to party tonight until it's 1999. That's basically the idea of the song. And this really helped establish the Minneapolis sound as a sound to contend with. He had his first hit on that album with the kind of mid-tempo rocker, Little Red Corvette. He even did kind of a synthesized rockabilly on Delirious. But that stripped-down synthesizer approach really showed up on songs like Let's Pretend We're Married, Automatic, Something in the Water Does Not Compute, and All the Critics Love You in New York. Prince is definitely at his rude boy best on that album. He's going off on critics and everything, but there's some great funk on that album too. DMSR absolutely slams into the ground. He even sampled it on one of his later songs, which I'll get into at another time, because DMSR is one of the greatest examples of funk in the Minneapolis sound. Lady Cab Driver, Prince plays live drums on that, and that's a good example of his live band funk. There's also two ballads in Free and International Lover, which were really, really broke through as Prince is a strong soul balladeer. There's a picture of Prince with the watercolors in the neon room. This is a double album on vinyl, condensed down to the price of a single one at Prince's request. Now, the thing about that album is that the reason it was a double album is because all of the songs were long, and Prince wanted it that way. In the funk tradition, he wanted extended runs. Plus the fact he was about to work on a motion picture that Warner Brothers had some serious doubt about, and it became this album, Purple Rain. Purple Rain is not a funk album to me, really. It's a new wave, soul-influenced pop rock record. But, you know, Let's Go Crazy is so gospel rock heavy with that Jimi Hendrix guitar solo. He has that acoustically flavored pop, Take Me With You, and these epic ballads like The Beautiful Ones, and of course, Purple Rain. They're very much what you'd call a bit lighter songs, you know, these concerts that they have. And I Would Die For You with its brilliant electronic theatrics, and of course, Wind Does Cry. A song that I can't even really define musically, because it really has no bass line. It's a very uniquely produced song. And of course, Darling Nikki, which was a big cabaret kind of rock ballad with some tremendous drum pedal work. But the thing about that is that apparently it really upset Tipper Gore that her daughter was listening to this, and it began the PMRC parental guidance trials that Frank Zappa was involved in, and albums get what they call Tipper stickers, parental advisory stickers based on language and subject matter. Ironically, as of this date, this album never actually got one, and it was the one that started it. The closest it comes to funk to me is a song called Baby I'm a Star. And another great new wave cut on that is Computer Blue, where Prince's father, John Nelson, writes a melody at the end of it that's kind of jazzy. You hear it played in the movie by Clarence Williams, but anyway. These are all fantastic albums, and these all encompass the height of the Minneapolis sound. After Purple Rain, everybody wanted to imitate the sound Prince had on these two albums right there. They really wanted to get that sound. Everybody. The Bar-Kays, Ready for the World had a hit called Oh Sheila, based on that sound, and it just became the sound of the 80s. And that's what Prince was all about. He is probably the most important funk artist of the 80s. Not all time, but of the 80s, because he innovated a new sound at that time, and it was allowed to flourish in its time. But by 1984, Prince himself had other ideas, which we'll get into the next time I come at you. See you then.